Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Fantasy Flower Field. I'm going to be sipping on a little Earl Grey tea, and if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting, and let's get sipping. Okay, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, Mars black, green oxide, fire red, and deep yellow. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and then I have 2 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up as well too. And if you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I am using, from the large canvas to, yep, even the paper towels in there for you. So that's all there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our landscape. So I'm going to be using my pencil, and I am making mine into just these roly-poly gentle hills, but you can certainly have your landscape looking as bumpy and as many mountains as you want. You can have just a long field if you want to, but I'm going to have some distant hills so it kind of gives a little bit of depth into the painting. So I'm going to give you a couple markers on the left hand side and on the right hand side, and then we're just going to connect our markers, and by the time we're done we'll have a bunch of roly-poly hills on our canvas. So on the left hand side of my canvas, I'm going to come up or down about halfway in my canvas, make myself a little bit of a marker. I'm going to go from between here and the bottom of my canvas. I'm almost about halfway down there, so I'm going to do another marker in through here. If I come up about 2 inches from this marker, I'll have a mark here, and then I'm about halfway between this mark and this mark. Somewhere in here is going to give me my 4th marker on this side. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to have one about halfway. I'm right about in through this vicinity, and I'm going to have one about an inch, inch and a half below that, and then another one about an inch, inch and a half below that, and then one about an inch and a half to 2 inches above that. So I have 4 markers that are almost equally spaced, and of course yours don't have to be exactly as mine are. This is just something that's going to give us a nice, fun, and gentle, roly-poly kind of hill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my bottom 2, and I'm just going to kind of come over in this vicinity. I'm going to come up just a little bit, and then I'll just kind of have it coming back down in through this direction. The next one that I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this one to this one, and I'm going to start up in through here, and then I'm going to actually bring it down a little bit, and then I'm going to come back up in through here. I'm going to go just a little bit higher than this marker in through here, and then I'm just going to roll it down a couple of bumps in through here. Then I'm going to take this one, and I'm actually going to connect it to this hill right about here. So I'm going to take this and give it just a good slope down in through here. And again, you don't have to be exactly as mine. This is just giving us a nice representational type of rolling landscape. So the next one I'm going to connect is this one up here to this one in through here. So again, yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to bring this next bump, I'm going to bring it up higher than that marker I have over in through there. And then I'm just going to give it a couple of roly-poly hills in through here, bring this along here, and then maybe just scoop this up in through here. And again, doesn't have to be exactly as mine. And then I'm going to connect here to about here. So this one is just a really gentle kind of off in the distance type of hill. And then we're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your hills in place, you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our sky. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm using are brown, blue, yellow, and white. And my sky is very bright and very light. So I'm not going to be using, white is going to be my dominant color. I'm not going to use much of the other colors at all, but I am going to have the upper left and upper right are going to be my darkest. So that's where I'll have a little bit of blue and brown in them. Then I'm going to have my brightest spot, which is going to be my sun, in through here. And I'm going to have the hint of a little bit of a yellow haze or glow around the sun. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put a tiny bit of brown, a tiny bit of blue, and a good amount of white on my brush. This is going to get me my top left and my top right corners in through here. And then once I've got it just started, I'm going to just kind of hit the top of my canvas in through here, make sure I'm kind of working some of my paint, some of that paint off of my brush so it doesn't go too dark on me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up white without washing my brush. And what this is going to do is it's going to work those colors off of my brush so that way I am not carrying too much of that darkness throughout the rest of the sky, because I really want this to be a very bright sky, but giving the atmospheric dimension of a little bit of darkness up in those top corners is going to help to make it look more on the realistic side, even though we've got some unrealistic elements that are going into this painting. So I'm just using a kind of a crisscross left to right type of brush stroke. It's okay if you paint over your hills, over the pencil mark of your hills. That actually helps you through the painting process to make make it look more natural. So if you start painting around the hills, that might look a little bit more unnatural, like you have, you know, like it's not something that would happen in nature. So I like to just kind of keep my brush stroke the same, going left to right, and also bump into my pencil mark. Even if my pencil kind of bleeds into my paint a little bit, I am all right with that. So I got it nice and light right here in the center with my white paint. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to take a tiny bit of yellow paint, really teeny tiny bit of yellow paint, because it's very powerful. And I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a glow on the outside of here. So I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm working it into the wet paint that is on the canvas. So that way it really is just kind of giving it a glow around that sun. So you don't have to do much, just kind of a little itty bitty bit. If you want yours to be more dominant or brighter, feel free to make it as high contrast as you want it to be, but I'm just going for a really subtle look, making this center really having that brightest spot to it. And then we are going to be utilizing the same brush for the next step. So after you've got your beautiful sky on here and as much glow from the sun as you want, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our hills. I'm going to use my large brush. The colors that I'm using are white, blue, brown, black, green, and yellow. So I'm using all my colors except for red on this step. So how I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be using a left to right type of brush stroke. I'm not going to have a lot of paint on my brush at any time because I like to kind of layer these type of steps or these type of distant hills We're not going to be painting this bottom section. That's going to be the field or the meadow that our ladies are walking through. So I want these hills to look like they're fading off in the distance. So this is going to be my lightest one, and I'm going to progressively get darker and darker as it comes towards this field in through here, and they're going to progressively get in focus. So I'll be using more yellow and green and black in this one, whereas over in this one I'm going to be using mostly white and brown and maybe a little blue. And then I'm just going to kind of get it darker as it gets closer to me. I will, for these back 3 hills, they're going to be a little bit darker at the top and a little bit lighter as they get down towards the bottom. And then this one's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be so close to us. We'll have this one dark at the bottom and light at the top. So I'll talk you through it as I go. I'm going to start at the back hill and work my way forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a teeny bit of brown, just a teeny tiny bit, and a teeny tiny bit of white, because it's a really teeny tiny area that I'm going to be painting. Oh, maybe a tiny touch of blue too. Just a itty bitty bitty bit on my brush. And I'm going to paint this hill a little bit darker at the top. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel because I feel like I have too much paint at this point. And I am just kind of using a left to right kind of rubbing type of technique. I'm going to add a little bit more white because I want this to go a little bit lighter for me. And I want that top line where it's meeting the sky to kind of go out of focus. So you can use a soft brush stroke right on top of your pencil to make that top line kind of not necessarily disappear, but definitely get a little bit more in the out of focus type of range. Your sun is here, so it would make sense if you had a light spot over in through here, but I definitely want the bottom to be the lightest. So I'm gonna maybe just add a teeny tiny bit more brown just at the top, a little bit over here just to make that top just a little bit darker. And then if you need to, like I feel like I want that bottom to be a little bit lighter, I'll just add a little bit more lightness. So the less paint I use, the more control I can keep throughout the process, and I remain in control as opposed to my brush. So that's why I like to have a very little bit of paint on my brush. So this next hill is going to be the lightest down at the bottom, but I'm also going to have it pretty light up here, and its darkest area is going to be up and through here. So I'm going to be using, I didn't wash my brush, I'm using a bit of brown, blue, green, and white. And this is going to start this hill up in the top left-hand corner. And again, yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. This is just something that's going to give you the out of focus type of look. This is a little bit distant over here too, so I'm going to just, while I have a bit of that darker variation of it on my brush, I can kind of just add it in through there. Now I'm going to start picking up just white paint, and it's going to get lighter and lighter as it comes over towards the sun. This is going to give us a beautiful illusion as it is being illuminated by the beautiful sun that is off in the distance. And then I'm just going to kind of keep going. You can use a rubbing type of technique. You can go left to right. You can dot it. Because I'm not using a lot of paint, the brush stroke itself is not super important because it's going to give me a soft look if I keep working it into the canvas. So if I was to do circles or if I was to do left to right, because I'm using a soft color or a light color that is very muted in nature, and I'm not using a lot of paint, the brush stroke will almost disappear as I go through this process. So I'm not really concerned about using a consistent brush stroke through the whole thing. And I'm going to make sure that I kind of get this top line to almost disappear. I don't want to really see my pencil mark underneath it, so I'm adding a bit more extra paint as you go through that process, and maybe just a little bit over here. And of course you can keep tweaking it as you see fit, but that's looking pretty good to me. I have my lightness going on down in through here to almost look like there's some haze at the bottom of those hills or something. Then as I get into this one, I'm going to be not washing my brush. I'm picking up a bit more brown and green and a little bit of white on my brush at the same time. I'm not going to pick up any more blue. So I'm going to start up at the top of this hill, and you can see it's going to start to get a lot darker as I come towards the main land area. I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel and picked up a bit of white so I could make sure that I got this hill a little bit lighter as it's receding down behind the main land area. And of course you can keep tweaking it until you feel like you've got it on there good. That's looking pretty good to me. So the next hill that I'm going for is this one in through here. So this one's going to be a lot more in focus. I'm going to have this area over in through here is almost going to look like a grassy knoll kind of thing. And then as it comes in through here, it's almost going to disappear down a hill. So as if my girls are walking to the edge of this meadow or field and maybe there's a little drop off or something. So you could wash your brush, I think would be the best suggestion I could give you, because I'm going to actually start with black and brown down at the bottom of this one. So a very tiny bit of black. I don't need much at all. Teeny tiny bit of brown. So black and brown. I'm just going to get a real dark area down at the bottom in through here. And again, I don't want much paint on my brush, so just a little tiny bit in through there. Now I'm going to pick up some green paint without washing my brush, and I'm just going to kind of start rubbing them together so they transition, so I can get it to transition into a lighter tone as it goes up that hill. And I'm working that black off of my brush before I even think about going over onto that right hand side. Now I'm going to pick up some green and yellow without washing my brush, and you can see it's going to start to transition into a lighter tone as we go up that hill. Now without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up yellow with a tiny bit of white, and I'm still just over on this left side of the hill right now, so I'm not invading that area too much yet. I want to make sure that I've got this on here before I go over to there, because I don't want there to be too much darkness over on that right hand side. So this is just going to kind of keep me safe as I'm working those dark colors off of my brush. And you can certainly, use a roly-poly kind of brush stroke to give the illusion of the hills. Now that I'm coming over here, I'm really going to load my brush with yellow and white. If you have a lot of black still left on your brush at this point, you'll probably want to wash it and dry it. But if you just have a teeny tiny bit on your brush, then that'll work out just fine. That'll help you to get a nice gentle transition over into the lighter area of this particular hill. And then I'm just going to go right up to my pencil mark, make sure that I've got that all taken care of. And once I've got it all on here and I've colored in the entire area, I can do as many little tweaks as I want. And I think the only real tweak that I am feeling I want to do is I want to get this top area a little bit lighter. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm putting yellow and white on my brush at the same time. And I really just want to make sure that the top of this hill is reading as being illuminated from that sun in through there. And I definitely want to make sure that I have enough of the yellow and white coming down into this area in through here, and definitely over in this area over here. So I just really want this to look like it's, maybe a little grassy field off in the distance that is really catching a bunch of that sunlight. And then once you've got this all done, we are going to be utilizing the same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it. Get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our grass. So I'm going to be using my big brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, green, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way towards the top. I'm going to be using a dotting or a stippling type technique, and I'm going to have it dark at the bottom and light at the top. So I'm starting with black, brown, and green all on my brush at the same time, and I'm just going to be doing these dots towards the bottom of my canvas. I don't need it to be painted in 100%. This is just really kind of setting the stage for the darker area of the grass. I am not going to pick up black again, so I'm right now just picking up brown and green, and I'm going to start working my way up the canvas. But while I work my way up the canvas, I do back in and crisscross over that previous section. So this technique or this process will allow my darker area to naturally blend in with the section that I'm doing right now. What you want to avoid kind of doing is having stripes of colors going up. So in order to avoid that, you have to crisscross over one section from the other. So I'll put it here and then I'll crisscross over into the previous section, or back myself back into the previous section. And then as I work my way up the grass, I will be transitioning right. I'm still just using green and brown, and as I go up, I'm going to start to pick up, now I'm picking up green and yellow. So what'll happen is now it's going to start to get lighter and lighter as it goes up. And again, I'm making sure that I crisscross back over into that previous section so I can have a natural gradient as it's kind of working its way towards the sun. And you can picture this to be, you know, it could be going uphill, or it could be going towards the edge of a meadow, and it's going to be going in a downward motion right after it goes over this edge here. So you can certainly picture it to be whatever you'd like. Now I'm just going to pick up yellow so I can start to get this lighter area to start to transition as I go in through here. And then what I'm going to do after I get this almost to the edge in through here is my tippy edge, my edge of my grass, my tippy edge, I don't think that's the right term, is going to be yellow and white. So again, I haven't washed my brush yet. So now that I'm using yellow and white, I'm going to be getting a really light area in through there, but it can be a little bit darker on the side. So my yellow and white, I'm just going to kind of, oh, I had a little bit of red on my brush there. That's going to add a beautiful tone in through there. There we go. I think I got it all off. So I'm just adding yellow and white to the edge of here, and I can make it the brightest in this center area. So as I'm crossing over or getting to the edge of my pencil mark, I'm going to just be dotting it in a pretty, I still see that there's remnants of red in my brush. Hold on. I don't want red over here. So I'm going to do that. There we go. So I am going to do it pretty messy and using just the corner of my brush to get these little almost grass-like pieces that are going to be showing the edges. It'll make it look a little bit more in focus, and it's going to be nice and bright, and you'll be able to see those organic kind of marks at the edge of the land. So it makes it look a little bit more natural. And again, I don't just want this to be a white line or a very light line at the top. I want it to transition into the previous section, but right now I'm just kind of concentrating on getting this edge done because I know I need to go a little slower when I'm doing this part of it. And then once I've got that in through there, then what I can do is I can start to blend it into the area that's behind it. So I'm going to actually wipe my brush off on my paper towel because I don't want this lightness to travel too far back. So I'm just going to kind of lightly dab the edges of it and make sure that it blends in well with the grass that's behind it. And then we are going to be using we're going to actually use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your land on here, you can wash and dry, or actually just put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the base coat for our girls. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint. I do want to forewarn you though that before you start this step that you have your canvas dry. So, you know, you could either take that extra long break if you'd like to, or you could find some kind of fun fanning method with your paper towel, or you could blow on it, or you could do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and dry it that way. But maybe yours is dry by this time, but you'll want to have it dry. So I'm going to use my small brush. Black paint is the color I'm going to be using. You could certainly, if you're not comfortable with just painting and going for it, you could certainly use your pencil and outline these girls first if you'd like to, but I'm just gonna go for it. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna take my small brush. I'm gonna actually water down my black paint a little bit. I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of water into it so it's almost like an ink consistency. I can always add more paint. If I make it see-through or if it's, you know, too thin for me, that's okay. I can always add another layer if I need to, but this will help me to get some nice smooth edges to it and to make sure that I fill in all of the gaps that I want to. So how we're going to do this, or how I'm going to teach you to do it, is we're just going to make two very, very long like ovals. We're going to start at the top of the head and we're just going to make ourselves a curved at the top and then just bring it down into the ground. So how I'm going to do this is I'm having 3 girls. They're all going to be at different heights. My first one is almost like in the center of my sun or almost in the center of my canvas. I think I've got her a little bit to the left and she's maybe an inch, inch and a half above this hill here. So I'm going to make myself a little bit of a marker in through there. And the width of this long shape that we're going to do is only about 1.25 inches or so wide. So this is going to represent the top of the head. So what I'm going to do is just bring this down in kind of the top of an oval type of shape. So something like this. And yours might grow a little bit more than you had expected it to. And then once you've got that shape on there, all you really need to do is draw 2 horizontal lines. I'm going to come about, I would say, if this is the bottom of my land in through here, I'm going to come about 1 inch or so below that. And that's about where I'm going to bring all of these shapes to, or in that general vicinity. So I just kind of marked it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to bring it straight down. And if it's not perfectly straight, don't worry about it. And when it meets the ground, you don't want a perfectly straight line coming off the bottom. So just kind of do a broken kind of line like that. And then I'll go ahead and do the right side. So I'm trying to keep it of equal widths apart or close. It doesn't have to be perfect because oopsie, I've just made the start of the bum by accident. But I will show you how to shape her in a minute. Let me see if I can just pull that in so we can start from scratch and have it the way that I want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and do my other 2 long shapes like this. And again, don't worry if it's not perfectly colored in at this point. So I'm going to have the next one is going to be maybe about 3 inches to the right of this one. And I would say maybe about 1 inch shorter. So I've got the top of it in through here. And then again, I will just give my oval top of the shape, top of the head, something like this. And again, it's going to have hair and stuff on it. So it doesn't have to be of a perfect shape anyways. And then I will just bring these 2 straight down. Something like this. And as I get towards the ground in through here, they don't all have to be landing in the same exact spot. And I'm just going to kind of, as it gets down towards that bottom, leave that really loose at the bottom. Color this whole section in, getting a nice coat on there like that. And then my third girl is somewhere in through here, and I've got her in between these 2 heights, so maybe somewhere in through here coming over to the left, I'm maybe about 3 inches to the left, somewhere in through here, 2 or 3 inches, something like that. I'm giving myself that oval shape. I am doing mine. I have 2 sisters, so this is meant to be symbolic of my sisters. You could have as many as you want. Maybe you just want yours to be a solo person. Maybe you want yours to be a male and a female. You can certainly do whatever you want. Maybe you want yours to be a person and an animal. You can have fun with this, but I'm doing it to be representational of me and my 2 sisters. So you can certainly have yours as fun as you want it to be and as many people as you want. And again, just leaving it loose at the bottom. So now that I've got the main shape on there, I need some shoulders, I need some hips, I need some elbows, and I need the bottom of the dress. So I've got all of my girls have long hair, so I don't really have to worry about a neck or anything like that, but I do want to kind of proportionately give them a decent shape, so to speak. So I've got this one in through here. Each one of them is kind of, the shoulders would be about a third of the way down that particular shape. In a general sense, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to start mine in through, I would say maybe right about here. And I'm just bumping this out just a little bit. You don't need to bump it out much. And then I just bring it back in maybe somewhere in through here. And I'm going to do the same thing. Think of this as like an hourglass type of shape. So I'm going to give a shoulder in through here and then just bring it back down about where I feel that waist would go. And then I'm going to give this person some hips. So I'm going to have the hips going out in through this direction. And then I'm going to have a hip coming out in this direction. And your people can be whatever shape you would like them to be. They can be very slender. They can have a big full dress on, whatever you'd like them to be. And then once I get down in through here, this is where I'm going to start to splay out the skirt. So I'm definitely going to be using some watered down black paint, and I'm bringing this out in a very kind of loose movement kind of way. I'm not holding my brush really tight. I want these to be very sketcherly and have a lot of movement into them. So I'm just really bringing out some beautiful kind of long lines in through here without going too far out or bringing it down to the bottom of the canvas. So something like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my next one. So again, I'm going to come maybe about a third of the way down. Give this one some shoulders in through here maybe. Bring it down into the waist. Do the same thing with this side over here. And of course, once you've got them on here, we still have elbows to go, and I'll show you how to do those in a minute. But once you've got the shape on, of course you can modify it. I'm going to have some hips in through here. That's a big hip in through there. So if you do that and you're like, oh, that's a little bit too much, instead of trying to take that in, you can always widen the waist a little bit, and that will make the hip look a little bit more narrow. So you can give an illusion by just, modifying another part of it by bringing another part a little bit bigger. And then this one's going to be up a little bit. So I'm going to bring the skirt or the bottom of the dress in through here, and then just kind of pull this out in a fun way. And we are going to be doing like highlights and all kinds of other stuff on it later too. So again, if you do something and you're like, that wasn't exactly what I thought it would be, you certainly have much time to modify it. So again, I've got some shoulders on over here. So theoretically, these would be maybe a little bit higher than that one. So somewhere in through here would give me a good shoulder. And again, I'm only coming out maybe a quarter to a half of an inch, not far at all. And then I got another shoulder in through here and bringing it down towards that waist. I've got a couple of hips in through here. Maybe this one's going to be in through here. Oops. My brush is going crazy on my hair. There we go. Going to have a little bit wider of a skirt on this one. There we go. And then I'm going to bring this skirt out to the left. So I'm going to bring a whole bunch of these long flowy pieces coming out towards the left. And then we just need to give ourselves a couple of little elbows. So the elbows are going to be straight down from your shoulders, and they end up right around your waist. So all I really need to do is come straight down from my shoulder, somewhere in through here, and then just give myself a little, I'll get my hand out of the way, a little kind of point at the bottom, and that's going to give me my shoulder. And I'm going to go ahead and do that on each one of my girls. So you want to come straight down from the shoulder and just pull it out just a little bit where that waist is. I need to move my brush a little bit different so you can see something like that. And of course the arm could be out a little bit. It doesn't have to be straight, but you don't want that shoulder, you don't want it to come out like that. That'll make the shoulder look a little out of sorts. So again, coming out here from my shoulder and then coming straight down towards where that waist is, giving myself a little elbow, and then same thing over on this side. And it's just kind of a repeat type of process to get these shoulders on here. And of course you can certainly modify yours, whatever, or elbows. I call them shoulders. I meant elbows, the elbows. We're doing a similar process for each of the elbows. I'm trying to watch out for black wet paint. My hand will go in the black wet paint and then go over to the side. So we got an elbow in through here, and then we got an elbow in through here. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your ladies on here, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting the stems to our flower umbrellas. So I'm gonna be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are brown and green, and I'm gonna just have mine kind of leaning in a little bit different directions. I just wanna make sure that they're tall enough where they can, you know, provide some good shelter for our ladies. So I'm gonna be putting some green and brown on my brush at the same time. I'm doing a stem that's going to, we'll see a little bit down towards the shoulders and then above the head. So I'm going to just start with this one in through here first. So I am going to, I think I'm going to have this one coming down in through here is where the base of it's going to go. So I'm going to just kind of travel up, maybe to about here, and then give it a little bit of a curve, landing where I want it to land. And because I'm using these multiple colors on my brush at the same time, I'll get some good diversity in the shade of that greenish brown natural color that I'm using for the stem. And then I'm going to put a little, I would say, the under part of a flower, the little greenery part. That's what I'm putting on now. I don't know the name of it, but it's going to be the under part of my imaginary flower. I think these are going to kind of resemble, like, I don't know, maybe some kind of form of daisy, but I'm going for more of the imaginary kind of flower today. So I'm going to have this one, I think I'm going to have the stem coming out somewhere in this direction. And if you bump into your black, it's okay, because you'll be able to paint over that later. And then I'm going to just kind of travel up to maybe about here on the head and bring this stem up in through this direction. And I have a little bit of an organic kind of shape or stroke to my brush, so it's not super duper straight. And then I'm going to put a little bit of that greenery stuff right at the top in through here. And then I'll go ahead and do my last one, which is going to be over here. This one I'm going to see a lot of it. I think I'm going to have my stem coming out by her elbow in through here. And I think this one I'm going to have coming up in through this vicinity. So maybe I'll have this one have a little bit more of a curve, something like that. This one I think I'm going to have leaning over a little bit farther like this, and then I'm just kind of putting that underbelly part of the flower on in through here. And then we are going to be using this small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the hair. So I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to be using, I'm going to use brown, yellow, white, maybe a little red, maybe a little bit of black. So you can really turn this hair into whatever style hair you want. You can have curly hair, you can have straight hair, you can have hair that's tied back in a barrette, you can have wavy hair, you can have short, you can have long, whatever you'd like to have is totally fine. What I'm going to be doing is, because this is the back side of our women, I'm going to have it pretty dark. I'm going to have like brownish kind of chestnut color hair, and I'm going to have them all in a similar hairstyle with the length and maybe the shape of it But I'm going to keep it pretty dark on the back side, and I'm going to have some little highlights on the side towards the sun. So what I've done is I've made myself like a chestnut kind of color, and how I got to that was I used some brown, a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of white paint, and you can really turn this into whatever color again that you want to. I'm keeping mine again on the more subtle side just because I want my flowers to be the star of the show, so I'm going to keep the hair on a little bit of the more, you know, duller, well, not duller, but definitely not the focal point. So this is looking pretty good to me. I will also be using brown and the other colors, and I'll let you know as I'm using them. So once you've got your desired color, this is one of those steps that less is more. You don't need a lot of paint to accomplish the look of hair, especially when it's in this silhouetted kind of way. So I'll start over on this side. I'm going to actually wipe my brush off on my paper towel because I just mixed my paint, so I have a lot of paint in my brush. So I just kind of wiped it off on my paper towel and just picked up a little bit more on the tip. So I want my hair to look on the longer side, and the light is over here, so this is where the brightest part is going to be. And I'm just going to kind of bring it down, maybe a little over the shoulder, and bring it down with some movement in it, so you can see I'm kind of curving my brush a little bit. I'm having this come down about mid-back for her, and I don't want it to be a solid color, so I really don't have a lot of paint on my brush, and I'm just bringing the little hint of some strands of hair right on top of that black. So again, I don't need much. And once I've got it on there, now I can add a brighter highlight on the side towards the sun. So you can either take that same color and just pick up some white, or, oh, my blue is gonna go into this little mixture here. This color here I just made, it's kind of like, I took this color for the hair and added a little bit of yellow and white to it. So it's just the base color with a little bit of sunshine in it with your yellow and white. And I'm going to use that as my highlight color where it's closest to the sun. So again, I don't have much paint on my brush. Actually, that's too much paint. I'm going to wipe it off on my paper towel. And I'm going to go right up to the edge. You can even cross over the edge into the exterior a little bit. That will give you an extra added highlight to it. So you can certainly make this highlight as bright as you want to by just extending it past the your outline that you did a little bit. And I'm going to keep this right side just a little bit lighter, so you know that the light is coming from over there. I think I'm going to add a little bit more over here on this side. As the paint dries on the black, it will get a little bit darker, so you might find that you need to add a couple of layers in order to get it to be as visible as you want it to be. So just know that that is definitely sometimes will happen, and you just kind of keep adding these little bits of layers into it. That's looking pretty to me. So I'm going to actually move on to my next girl in through here, and of course you can keep adding or subtracting as much as you want. If it goes wrong, just paint it back black and start all over again. And if you wanted to have black hair, just do little white or gray highlights. That'll do the trick. So this one I think I'm going to have coming, this one's going to have a bit more movement to it, and she's going to have highlights from both sides because she's got the sun right in front of her. So I'm going to extend this past the head just a little bit, and I'm going to bring it down into this back. This is going to remind me of the kind of the feathered hairstyles of days gone by. My sisters and I used to wear our hair feathered a lot. And just think of how the hair would fall on the head. So it's going to have a little bit of roundness to it. So I'm going to keep my brush a little bit with a curve on it, so you can certainly see the curve of the head. If you want it to look like it pops out a little bit more, just put a little bit more of that lightness where it pops out the most. And then I'm just using that custom color that we created, and this one I'm going to have some pieces coming out over the shoulder. I'm going to maybe add a couple of black pieces too that extend past the framework of sorts that we put on there originally, and that will add little stray hairs going throughout it. And of course the back will have a bump on it too, so if you wanted to add a little bit of curve as it comes down that back, that's great. And you can add as much hair as you want. And I'm going to just kind of add a couple more pieces coming in through here, bringing that. I'm going to add a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. You'll see what I'm doing in a second here, and just giving a couple little pieces just kind of coming out a little bit further than that original marker that we had done. This will give you a little bit more body to it if you want to have that type of look. I'm going to add that highlighted color back to my onto my brush. This is going to give me some nice highlights at the top of the head. And of course you can add white to it if you want that highlight to be a bit more. You can certainly do that, but again, I'm just using the tip of my brush so that way I can have some good control over what's happening here. And if you wanted to use a smaller brush, you certainly could do that. I'm going to just bring some of this a little bit further back in through here, make sure that I've got everything that I want. And enough highlight. I'm leaving a little bit of a part down the middle of her head, just so it looks like the hair is kind of going to the left, to the right. And again, if you wanted a different color, this is just meant to be a color that I like, so you can certainly make yours into whatever way that you want. Just make sure that you can see it as much as you want to see it. So, and I'm just moving each piece of hair, whatever direction. Oh, that looks pretty. It's like it's being blown by the wind a little bit. I like that. Maybe I'll put a little piece coming on over the shoulder in through here. Let me just get this little piece to curl over the shoulder. Yeah, there we go. We got a little wind happening, letting it fall down her back like this. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm just going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel to avoid having too much paint on it. I'm starting with that custom kind of chestnut color that we did. And this one is going to be probably a little similar to that one, with the highlighted part being over here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to bring this one down towards the back, in through here. We've got this. So this way, how I put it all over the shoulders, this is our kind of like rolling over the shoulder like this. This is allowing, of course, the viewer to be able to see that there is shape to the body. It's allowing us to see kind of what direction the body is turned in. So we can see this one better than the right side. So you can certainly, play with that type of information on the painting just by using these little painterly strokes. So we're not adding much paint, but because I am adding it in a specific direction, it's allowing the viewer to understand what's happening with that body and how it is turned and translates to the sun and to everything around it. And then I'm adding my extra bit of highlight over here on the right, or on the left hand side. And then I am going to be, let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We're actually going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful hair on here, and again, you could have curly hair if you wanted to, you could have any little extra pieces if you wanted to, but once you've got it on here, you can, I'm going to put a little piece over here, I guess. Once you've got it on here, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our flower umbrellas. I'm using my small brush. I'm going to be using red, yellow, and white are going to be my colors. So I'm going to start with red paint, and of course you can have your flowers whatever color that you would like, but I'm going to go for red, yellow, and orange are going to be my colors, but you can certainly go for whatever you'd like. So how I'm going to do this is I just loaded my brush with red paint, and these again are imaginary kind of flowers, so you can certainly build yours whatever way that you would like to, but I'm just bringing them out from the bottom of this green part, and then I'm just bringing them up in these cute little messy, curvy lines going up towards the center of the flower. And I've got mine pretty big because I want it to be big enough where it would kind of work as an umbrella for this beautiful woman that's below. So you can certainly have yours going whichever direction that you would like to, and however big that you would like to. And then what I'm going to do for my next color is that's all I'm going to do for the base coat. It's just a nice messy organic kind of looking flower with my petals kind of going in each which way. So it kind of looks like a I'm going to say this wrong, Gerbera daisy, something along that line. We're looking at them from the side. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. My next color is going to be yellow, but I know that my yellow is really, really see-through. So I'm going to actually use yellow. I'm going to mix it with a tiny bit of white paint so it's not so see-through. I don't want it to go much lighter than it is naturally, but I do want to add just a tiny bit of white paint in it just so it's not so see-through. And then once I've done that, I'm going to use that as my base coat for this flower over in through here. And I've got this one a little bit more tipped, so I'm going to bring this one down a little bit further in this direction, and it's crossing over in front of my my hill a bit, and it could certainly bump into this one if you wanted it to. I'm going to make it go a little bit, they might touch a little bit but not too much, and then I'm just going to kind of go ahead and finish putting on these beautiful petals in through here. And again, you could make yours as big and beautiful as you want. I'm really not doing anything too fancy with it, just kind of getting that base coat on there. And then once I've got that one, I'm not going to wash my brush because I'm going to use yellow and white to pre-mix with my red to make an orange color. So I'm just mixing a little red and yellow together to make orange. And I've got a tiny bit of white left on my brush, so that'll help to make it not so see-through, but I don't really, it's okay if my orange is a little on the see-through side. So I'm just pre-mixing myself. And I do want to make myself enough of this orange because I'm going to be utilizing it in my dress and in my flowers down below. So just make sure that you make yourself enough to utilize in those areas as well. So once I've got myself a beautiful orange, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my base coat for this flower. So again, I've got this going in a little bit different of a direction. This one's kind of leaning over towards the right in through here, and I'm making it big enough where it can shelter my woman underneath. So you can certainly, so these are kind of a little bit wider than they all are tall, but again, these are imaginary flowers. So you could make yours taller if you wanted to. And I'm making my petals really on the carefree kind of loosey-goosey type of way. So they go in different directions. I'm overlapping that little center a little bit. And then I am going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your umbrellas in the first coat, you can wash and dry that small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting the colored part on our dresses. I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm going to use the same color that I used for the base coat for the flower umbrellas up above. So if I use yellow here, I'll use yellow here, red, red, orange, orange. So I'm going to start with my yellow one. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be kind of treating it like the hair, where I'm not going to put a ton of paint on it. I really just want it to look like it's in the shadow and maybe give a little bit of shape to her rear end, and then carry that color out into the grass a bit, and maybe give a little bit of a highlight on the edge or where it's facing the sun. So I've got my yellow and whatever combination I have up there, that's what I've got on my brush right now. I'm going to start in the rear end area and just kind of give these little bits of curves on top of that area. Now, I'm not putting a belt or anything like that on the dress. I'm really just giving the illusion of this subtle color of the dress, so it just complements the painting well. So if you wanted to put any more details or anything like that, feel free to do so. I'm going to put a little bit of it on the arms and the shoulders as well. Again, I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, and it will get darker as it dries. So if you do something and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I like that too much, just give it a minute before you cast judgment and see if it dries in the realm that you would like. And of course, you could have a little shadow behind her arm if you wanted to make it look more realistic. If you wanted there to look like there's a highlight, just pull that yellow out a little bit farther than the actual black mark itself, and that will show that the clothing of sorts is being illuminated by the sun. It's just an easy way to add the illusion of a highlight without having to do too much over on that side. I think I might put a little bit of white just so you can see it on top of this, the greenery behind it. If it's too close in color, you might want to add a bit of white. You can add little tiny highlights in the areas that might be catching the sun. So I could put a little bit on her waist if I wanted to. So you could certainly play with that kind of stuff if you could see it from the light source. I'm going to bring it all the way down this right hand side with a little bit of that yellow and white just to give myself a highlight on this side of the clothing, so it looks like it is being shined on by the sun. And then once I've got the main area done and I've got my little highlights where I want them to be, I'm going to put some of this yellow in the base of the dress going down into the ground. So I don't necessarily want to cover up all of the black that I have. This is meant to be in addition to, and it's meant to theoretically just be kind of growing into the ground with the flowers. And so I'm going to bring some of these streaks out in, it's going to overlap in my head. These colors are going to overlap with the red area. So I'm bringing these farther than I brought the black. And then once I feel like I've got this one done, which I feel like she's looking pretty fancy right now, just to add a little bit more yellow back in through here just to make sure that you can really see that color. There we go. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm just going to move on to the next one. So the next one's going to be with red. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm putting red. I'm starting on her rear end, similar to how I did the other one. And again, because I have the black underneath, it's going to turn out darker as it dries. So if you want it to be brighter, you'll want to do a little bit more layers. And if you want there to be a highlight of sorts on the edges, just go right past that black, and that's going to give you that natural illusion of a highlight over on the edges. Even if you can see the stuff, you know, the grass underneath it or whatever, that's totally fine. And then I'm going to bring this up a little bit close to her hair. And the hair is gonna cast a nice a shadow type of illusion underneath it. And then I'm gonna put some of this on the arms. So you don't really need to do much with this black background underneath here. Just adding this little hue of this color. I'm putting some along the edges. So I've got that natural highlight along the edges of the dress being cast from the sun. So just pulling this red out just a tiny bit past my the black area. That's going to give me the added highlight that I want along the edges of the body. And when I get done the body, I am going to bring this black or the red paint down the train of my dress like this. And again, I'm just kind of having fun with it. I'm just being loosey-goosey with it. I'm going to have it kind of cascade over this one and come into that area. And then once I got that done, I'm going to wash and dry my brush and repeat on my orange girl over here. So I have washed and dried my brush. I'm picking up some of my orange. I'm going to start on the rear end. It's a very similar process. As you can see, I just do the same thing from one to the next, which is great because it's a nice way to practice a similar technique from one area to the next. And you can adjust it as you want to. If you want one area to be lighter or darker or have more color in it, you can certainly have fun with your skill set that you are learning from one person to the next. And then on the shoulders, I'm going to add this orange coming out just a little bit farther so you can see that highlight along those edges. I'm going to do the same down her waist in through here. Just bring that orange out just a little bit, and if I wanted to, of course, I could add a little bit of the white as well. And then I'm going to bring it down into her train of her dress, just bringing it down in through here. I'm going to make sure that I cross over into that grassy area a bit, and then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful dress all nice and colored, dresses colored as much as you want to, you can wash and dry this medium brush or the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm finishing my flower umbrellas. So I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using yellow, red, orange, brown, black, and white for my colors. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do a little shadow underneath each of them at the bottom of each flower, and then I'll do highlights for the highlighted tips of the petals. So I'm going to start, I'll start over here on the left. I'm going to start with a touch of black and a touch of brown on my brush. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to add a little bit of speckly kind of shadowy areas down underneath in through this greenery area. So I'm kind of just dotting and dabbing, doing these little dashes. Then I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up brown and my yellow that I used for here. And this is going to create the shadows in the petals underneath. So I know that my sun is over here, so I would have a little bit more shadows over on this left side in my opinion. So I'm going to put a little bit more underneath in through here. And then once I've got my shadows, I'm going to just wash and dry that brush, and I'm going to pick up my yellow plus white on my brush. So this is going to create my highlights on the tips of these flowers. And if you need to, like for the yellow, I feel like I need a little bit more white on my brush, so you can certainly add more white or more yellow wherever you feel that you need to bring that to. And you can even bring some of these highlighted pieces out past the original profile of the first set of petals that you did. So I just kind of get them on there. That's looking pretty to me. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next one. Or maybe a little more white in through here. And again, it doesn't have to be anything perfect. Just make sure that you've got enough on there that is speaking to you and making your painterly eye nice and happy. And then once you've got it the way that you want, just wash and dry that brush and you can move on to the next one. So again, I'm going to start with a little bit of brown and a teeny tiny touch of black on my brush. I think I have too much paint on there. Just wipe it off on my paper towel. I'm going to start in through here with a couple of little dots and dashes just to get this underneath to have a little bit of dimension to it. Then I'm going to pick up my original color and brown. So this would be red and brown to give me some shadowy areas underneath these petals, or the underneath petals are a little bit more shadowed. So that's where I'm going with this. And then once I've got that on there, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up red and white. So that's going to give me a pinkish kind of color for my highlights. And I'm just going to kind of give some nice highlighted pieces around the edges. And if you feel like you want to bring more dimension into it, you can certainly, you could do a third tone. You could do a pink inside there if you wanted to. You could certainly mix it up as much as you wanted to. If you felt that you needed to bring back it, or do some more red in there, feel free to do so. And then once I've got that which I feel that's looking pretty good. Once I've got that in there, I'm going to move on to my orange one. So I just wash and dry my brush. Again, I'm going to start with a little bit of black and brown. I'm going to do my little dot dash type of shadow coming on underneath here. This is going to, again, provide me with some great dimension at the bottom of that flower. And then once I've got that in through there, I'm going to just pick up some brown and my orange. And this is going to provide me with the shadowy petals. So I'm going to go more on the right side of this one, opposite of what I did on my yellow flower. So this is going to give me the shadow on the bottom right for this particular flower. And of course you can just make sure that it looks like it belongs with everywhere else. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up some of my orange and my white. So again, it was the same process for every single flower. This just gives you a great way to add some good dimension. Now that you had that base coat on there, you can go ahead and add these bits of highlights and shadows, and it just brings that flower to life. So if you feel like, you know, you wanted even more, like this orange one, I suppose you could utilize your yellow as a highlight color within this particular flower. So feel free to explore your visual preference when it comes to these highlighted and shadow type effects, but just adding that diversity in the colors will really make them look beautiful and have a lot of dimension to them. Maybe pulling a couple of these out a little bit further. That's looking pretty. All right, so we're going to be switching to our big brush for the next step. So once you've got your flower umbrellas finished, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for the flowers that are coming from the dresses and on the ground. So I'm going to use the base coat that I used for the top flower. So this will be red, this will be yellow, and that'll be orange. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be making dots. So I want them smaller where they're at the dress, and as they come towards the bottom of the canvas, I want them bigger. So I'm going to be using just the corner of my brush when they're up in the dress, and then as they kind of splay out and get towards the bottom of the canvas, I'll be pushing my brush a little bit harder so they're a little bit bigger. I will be having the sections kind of overlapping so it looks like, you know, the flowers are dancing together or growing together. So I'm going to start with my red ones. So I'm just kind of loading my brush up with red paint, and you can do heavy dots or, you know, thin dots, whatever you want. And I'm going to just I want it to kind of look like they're naturally just, you know, kind of falling off of the dress a little bit. I don't want it to be too, that one was too big. My first one was too big for my liking. So it's a good thing I can just wipe it off with my hand. So I just want them a little bit smaller up at the top. And then as I'm coming down into the ground, I can overlap it into the yellow area a little bit, making sure that I've got it overlapped on some of these stripes. And then I'm bringing the red almost all the way to the right and to the left at the bottom. And this is where I'm going to push my brush a little bit harder so they look like they're larger flowers. So once I've got the red ones on here, and again, I know that when it dries, it'll probably be a little bit darker. So I might end up going back and adding some additional layers. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to go on to my yellow. So what I'm going to do with the yellow, again, I'm using the base coat that I had from the flower up top, which was yellow with a little bit of white in it. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to do some tiny dots within the dress as if they're kind of falling off of it. And then I'm going to just kind of get them to go bigger and bigger as they come over here towards the left. I will overlap them into the red area a little bit, knowing that I just painted the red, so I'm kind of being mindful of where those dots are. And then as I get towards this bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to really start pushing my brush pretty darn hard, but I don't want to cover up all the grass because that would take away from the effect that I'm going for. And we are going to be doing a highlight to these in a minute, so if they're not speaking to you as much as you thought that they would, just wait a minute because we still have that highlight to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going in for the base coat of that one, which is going to be my orange color. So that was just my red and my yellow, and I am making these little tiny dots within her dress as if they're falling right off of her dress, and they're just growing right into the ground. And then as I go into this area, if you want to pull them up a little bit into the meadowy grass, feel free to do so. And I'm just going to do these little tiny ones as they're coming over here, maybe get them to cross over in through there a little bit, and then cross over into the red a little bit, and then I'm going to get them to be really pretty big down in this bottom right hand corner. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful base coat for your flower dresses, or your dress flowers, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing the flowers, the dress flowers. So I'm going to use my large brush, and the colors I'm going to be using are the base, red, yellow, and orange, plus white. So on the red dress, I'm going to actually pre-mix myself a pink as like a medium tone, but on these two dresses in here, I can get away with using just white and the original color on my brush at the same time. So I'm going to start with my red dress first. So what I did was I just took a little bit of my red paint and added it with a touch of white paint. So you don't need much, just something to get it into the pink zone. And this will be part of my highlight color. And what I'm going to do is I'm in essence going to be utilizing it just to give me some sparkle on these flowers down in through here, and on the back too. But I'm going to use it also with white to add a really bright highlight of the flowers on the side that is closest to the sun, which is going to be right in through here. So right now I just have the pink on my brush, so I'm going to just kind of start adding some little dots of it going up in through the dress, in through here, and not a lot. I don't want to cover up all of the original red that I have, so I'm just making sure that I've got a good representation of the pink where I want it as the highlighted color, because when I look at the flower up top, after we utilized the red and the white on our brush at the same time, we ended up getting some pink up top. So this is going to help to tell that story as well and to translate that as we come down in through here. So I'm just adding some of this pink down into these flowers down here. And again, I'm not doing much. I just want to give a little bit of extra highlighted and sparkly dimension on these flowers. I don't want to overwhelm them. I might get this to go back a little bit. Hold the phone. That one went a little bit too awry on me, so I'm going to add some red back on top of here. Maybe a touch of black just to get this to go. There we go. That was a little bit too much for me, and I will make that up in a minute here. There we go. We got that going on. All right. So I'm going to add some white to my brush right now to give myself this really beautiful highlight along the edges in through here. And it's going to translate as the sunshine is just kind of peeking through and adding this extra bright highlight to these little areas in between the girls as they are walking through this beautiful flower field meadow and enjoying each other's company and the scent of all the beautiful flowers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to go on to my yellow one. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to pick up some of my yellow and white on my brush at the same time. So this will end up being my highlight color for this one. And then I'm just going to kind of utilize the tip of my brush to get some of these lighter pieces within here, and just teeny tiny tips of my brush are going to get this going. And then on this side, I'm going to have a lot of it in through, a lot of the lightness right in through here where you can see it from the sun. And then over in this area over here, I'm going to utilize quite a bit of my white in order for you to be able, or for the viewer to see the profile of what is assumed to be the flower dress, or the dress that's creating all of these beautiful flowers within the meadow. So I made sure that I had a lot of lightness in through there. And then throughout the rest of the dress, if I feel that I need any more, or if I need more of that yellow carried over into the red side, I can certainly go ahead and adapt that as much as I feel fit. I think I want a little bit more lightness over in through here. Yeah, that's working. And then maybe a tiny bit right in through here. There we go. And then I'll go over to the orange dress. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm picking up my orange plus a little bit of white on my brush at the same time. And this is going to give me these beautiful bright ones along the edge. And you can utilize more of the orange or more of the white, whatever is, again, speaking to you in that way as you're painting it, whatever your painterly hand is telling you. If it wants more white, give it more white, and just enjoy the process. I'm going to again do the same thing on this side that I did over here, which would be adding that extra brightness over at the top of this section and making these flowers just appear much more illuminated, so they look like they are catching the bits from the sunshine just a hair more, and they're being highlighted as much as you want them to be. I think I want a little bit more white over here, a little bit more highlight. Yeah, there we go. Making sure that I can see these highlights from the left to the right, and that I've got it as much as I want, maybe a little bit more coming up the skirt in through here. And then you just sit here and you fiddle with it. So if you wanted more redness or more, like I feel like I want a couple more red flowers back in through here. So I just kind of wiped my brush off and just filling in some spaces. So now's the time where you just kind of go back and you say, I think I want a little bit more here or a little bit less here. And you just kind of fiddle with it until it is in the intensity that you want and is as phantasmical and exciting as you want it to be. And then we have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with your small brush. So once you've got all of your beautiful flowers all nice and dazzling at the bottom of your canvas, you can put your big brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm gonna sign this one in the bottom left. I'm using my small brush. I'm using black paint. I usually sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. It's your painting, you sign it whoever you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful fantasy flower girl image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.